All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As you're joining, please go ahead and add in where you're calling from into the chat on whatever platform you've joined us on. If it's on YouTube, tell us where you're calling in from. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Friday to join us, and we'll get started in just a moment. Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday. As we're getting started, go ahead and put your where you're calling in from into the chat so we can see the vast array of places that have decided to join us to talk about the Farm Bill today. All right. And we'll go ahead and get started today. So, hello, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Shoshana Abrams. I'm the Federal Legislative Campaign Manager at EDF Action. And today we're going to be discussing the critical federal legislation package, the Farm Bill. And if you're not that familiar with the Farm Bill, that's okay. It's a package of federal legislation that's passed really only once every 5 years. It covers all programs and policies related to food, to agriculture and nutrition. This package of legislation determines how food is grown, what food is grown, and the livelihoods and practices of farmers and ranchers nationwide. It's a really big deal. And we're going to go into detail today about what all of this means, why it matters for climate, and tell you how you can get involved and help be an advocate for climate smart agriculture. So here's a run through of our program today. First, we're going to tune into a video from Senator Stabenow, a true leader in Congress in climate smart agriculture. And then we're going to dive into a deep panel discussion with an amazing group of experts that we've compiled today, including leaders from EDF, the National Farmers Union, and a farmer from Minnesota. During the discussion, they'll share their expertise and perspectives on this Farm Bill, and so we can better understand its impacts. After that, we'll give you the opportunity to take action now by contacting your members of Congress. Your actions will have a meaningful impact on the Farm Bill and on the future of climate smart agriculture in this nation. So let's dive in. The first piece is we're going to roll a video from Senator Stabenow, our fearless leader in the Senate, the chairwoman of the Senate Agricultural Committee.
Good afternoon, and thank you to EDF Action for organizing this really important event, and to everyone joining us today. The Farm Bill, as you know, is where we invest to keep farmers farming, to keep families fed, and to keep rural communities strong. And importantly, it's also a conservation and climate bill, which is why I so appreciate all of your wonderful leadership and help and support on this bill. Farming has always been a tough way to make a living. With the climate crisis, it's getting even tougher. Last year, our country saw 18 separate billion-dollar disasters. This year, as we know, we've already seen 24. And it doesn't take a billion-dollar disaster to destroy a family farm. All it takes is one violent storm. Farmers know this, and they want to be part of the solution. That's why we are seeing record demand for popular voluntary conservation programs. And as you know, we made a major investment of almost $20 billion in new funding for these programs through the Inflation Reduction Act to support our farmers and our ranchers and our rural communities, like rural electric co-ops. These programs make farms more resilient and leverage the power of agriculture, taking carbon out of the air, putting it into the ground to build soil health, keeping it in the ground. So there's so much that our farmers are doing and want to do, and that we can do if we make sure that these funds remain where they need to be. So I'm committed to protecting the IRA Climate Smart Agriculture funding in the Farm Bill for its intended purpose, addressing the climate crisis. I also want to make sure that the money to rural electric co-ops, the money to farmers through REAP and other ways for them to lower their costs by adding solar arrays or wind turbines on the farm or addressing other areas of energy efficiency, all of that needs to stay in place as well. But I need your help. I need you to tell the story of how important these investments are to farmers, to our future, to our communities, to our climate, to our world. I need you to share how conservation and climate-smart agriculture is one of the best ways to address the climate crisis. There's so much more that we can do through sustainable forestry and focusing on the right kind of agricultural practices, regenerative agriculture, the other pieces of this that really can make a big difference. Unfortunately, it looks like passing the Farm Bill is going to take a little longer this time than I would like, and we're going to need an extension. You know, it'd be irresponsible to allow vital programs to lapse or revert back to Depression-era policy, and I'm not going to let that happen. But it would be equally irresponsible to take our focus off of a multi-year Farm Bill, and one that keeps our progress going. I'm laser focused on delivering a bipartisan Farm Bill in the coming months. I need you to be laser focused on being my partner, fighting with me to protect our investments in our climate smart agriculture funding. And I know you well because you have been with me every step of the way. I'm so grateful for that. And thank you so much for being my partner.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Stabenow. We're so lucky to have champions like you who are making these bills happen, who are fighting the good fight in Congress and being an advocate for climate smart agriculture. So we're now going to transition to our panel discussion. I think we're going to bring all of those folks up. Hello, welcome to our wonderful panel. Thank you all for joining us. Before we get started with our really in-depth questions, I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself. And if you could tell us a little bit about what the Farm Bill means for you, I think that'd be a nice place to start. So why don't we go ahead and go to Naya first.
Awesome. Thanks, Shoshana. Hi, everyone. My name is Naya Osifeso. I'm a Federal Affairs Manager at EDF covering agriculture and water policy. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for this important conversation about the upcoming Farm Bill. To me, the Farm Bill is a cornerstone of agriculture policy in the United States. It is a critical package of legislation passed about every 5 years that shapes the future of food, nutrition, and agriculture policy in our country. It represents the livelihoods of countless farmers and the security of our food supply. And it's a commitment to supporting our agricultural communities, ensuring food access for all, and increasingly promoting climate smart farming practices. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Naya. And over to you, Kristen.
Good morning or afternoon, depending upon where you are in the country. Hello from South Central Minnesota. I'm Kristen Weeks Duncanson. My family and I own Highland Family Farms. We're a row crop operation, and plus we raise hogs in the finishing end of the hog industry. I've been a longtime partner with EDF through their top producer network, and also work with other organizations in DC surrounding conservation, adaptation for farmers. The Farm Bill for us is really an opportunity to see what programs and partners are out there and set the stage for how we can work in the next 5 years. The critical portion of it is the fact that of the timing. The timing is very important. As we finish up the crop today at our farm, we hope to finish harvesting our corn. We've already started planning for next year, buying seed, looking at pricing, looking at opportunities to partner with on different programs that are offered through the Farm Bill. So it's critical in lots of ways for us. It also sets up for our friends who are in forestry and through a lot of the nutrition programs that USDA administers. So I'm pleased to have the opportunity to visit with you all today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kristen. And we're really looking forward to all you can add to this discussion as someone real on the ground doing the work. So thank you for joining us today. Aaron, why don't you go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Aaron Shire. I'm the Government Relations Director at National Farmers Union. And just briefly, a little bit about who we are, who NFU is. We were founded in 1902 by farmers who came together to work together to get a fair shake in the marketplace. And we're a grassroots organization. We're composed of family farmers and ranchers all across the country. And my job is to represent our members, more than 220,000 Farmers Union members, and the grassroots policy they create every year here in Washington, D.C. So to the question of what the Farm Bill means to me, but really what it means to our members, to Farmers Union members, the Farm Bill just has a huge impact on farmer livelihoods, and the farm economy is cyclical. That means commodity prices, input prices, the things that farmers need to get a crop in the ground, those prices fluctuate and those costs fluctuate outside of farmers' control. And the Farm Bill includes programs or a safety net that help address that perennial challenge farmers face around managing those price and cost fluctuations. So we need to update the Farm Bill to address the current market realities and some of what we expect will be coming in the future to make sure farmers can run strong farm businesses. And to our members, the Farm Bill is also about creating fair and competitive market opportunities. We need fair, competitive, open markets to have that fair shake in the marketplace. And then, of course, especially because I'm here, I want to talk about this, but this is true for our members, the Farm Bill is about stewardship. And that's of our environment, of our climate. And most farmers are great stewards. They want to be better. Our members love voluntary incentive-based conservation programs that are in the Farm Bill. Many of them use them, and they need those conservation programs to make sure those conservation measures are affordable. It's been mentioned already a few times, but to our folks, the Farm Bill really is also a food bill. It's very much about those nutrition programs, making sure those nutrition programs remain strong. That is absolutely essential. And then finally, the Farm Bill is just so much more. I've given some of the top things for Farmers Union members, but the Farm Bill's been described as a Swiss Army knife. There are many different tools to address many different challenges around credit, around rural development, and of course around nutrition and commodities, and of course conservation as well. So the Farm Bill means a lot to our members, and I'm really glad to be here today to share in this conversation.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for being here today and for painting that really broad picture of what the Farm Bill is and what it means for America's farmers. And then last but not least, over to Britt for an introduction.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. My name is Britt Grossman. I lead EDF's global climate smart agricultural work, including our work in the US. And I'm not sure how much I can add to the great interventions already made. The Farm Bill is crucial. As somebody who really focuses on climate smart agriculture, we focus on both reducing emissions and helping farmers adapt to the changing climate that is inevitably already baked in, right? We're already seeing more erratic weather, more storm events, issues like that, which really affect farmers. If you think which sector is the most dependent on weather changes, it's farmers, right? So farmers really are on the front lines of every single weather event change that may happen, whether it gets hotter or the seasons come at different times, like spring starts a bit earlier or a bit later. All those kind of things really impact how farmers adjust, and like Kristen mentioned, how they start planning, and it makes planning harder. So one of the things that is really important about the Farm Bill is that it can help support, through these voluntary incentives Aaron mentioned, both efforts that farmers can make to reduce the emissions. So in the US, agriculture contributes about 10% of overall greenhouse gas emissions. So there are some reductions that can be made, for instance, in the livestock sector, in terms of fertilizer losses, in terms of avoided land conversion. Those are like some three big categories we think about. But also, most importantly, really, it's about this, helping farmers adapt to this changing climate, helping them try different practices, different crops perhaps, and really continue feeding America and the rest of the world. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. Thank you for inviting us on.
Wonderful. Thank you, Britt. And that really leads us into our first question that I'm going to come back to you, Britt, for. So thank you all so much for being with us. We have a lot that we could talk about today, as you heard. So we're going to try and give an introduction to this whole subject, and then also give you real takeaways that you can do to help us get a good climate smart agriculture bill passed this year. So first, Britt, I'm going to come back to you. You mentioned emissions from the agricultural sector and how farmers are on the front lines of climate change and adapting to the new world that we live in. Can you give us a little bit of an overview of what we mean when we say climate smart agriculture? What are we talking about, and what are some of the solutions that EDF is most excited about?
Yes, of course. Yes. So climate smart agriculture, I always see it as two sides of a coin. Climate smart agriculture is agriculture that is both changing its practices or its ways to reduce emissions, and that at the same time becomes more adapted to those baked in climate changes. So it's both those things. It's what we call in the climate space, both mitigation and adaptation. So you have to do both. And when we can do both at the same time, that's ideal. Sometimes some practices will really help on one end of the coin, and some will help on the other end of the coin. Some of the things that we've really been looking at are sort of the major emission categories. So if we talk about the mitigation part first, one of the major emission pieces that we are concerned about at EDF is the methane emissions from the livestock sector. At EDF, we're really concerned about methane because it's a fast warming gas, and it really will determine the rate of warming. Even if you consider climate change is kind of baked in and CO2 is already in the air, it'll stay there for many, many years. But what methane does with these fast heating gases is they determine how fast we're going to change this. And this is where mitigation and adaptation connects. If we can slow down the rate of warming, we can provide a longer adaptation period for farmers where they can try new things, where they can really start settling into a different pattern. And so it's really important. So the livestock sector, and that's both the manure management and the burps of the cows. And there are some solutions there as are on our website, and I'm happy to talk about that at any other time. Other things are fertilizer losses. So fertilizer is crucial to plant and yield growth, but sometimes we use too much, or we put it on at an inappropriate time and it gets lost. Again, climate change makes it harder. If you're not expecting a certain weather event and you've just put your fertilizer on, you might have fertilizer losses. So there again, fertilizer is a really important category. In terms of adaptation, we've looked at some major crops and how they are likely to fare under climate change. We looked at wheat in Kansas, corn in Iowa, soy in Minnesota, strawberries in California, and all of them will be negatively affected by climate change. So this is not a case of where is it going to happen, what crop is it going to be? It's going to affect all crops. It's not going to affect every farmer in the same way. It's not going to affect every region in the same way, but there will be effects. And we need to start building a system, and the Farm Bill can be really helpful there, that allows us to be more flexible. Right now, the system is really driving support for certain practices and certain crops. And we need a system that's more flexible so that farmers can be the drivers and they see what's happening on the ground and they can make those decisions. So those are just some of the things on our mind. Thank you, Shoshana, for that great question.
Wonderful. Okay, so we've heard a little bit about what climate smart agriculture is and some of the solutions. I'm going to turn things over to Naya to talk a little bit about the Farm Bill and EDF's priorities, and then we're going to move into a discussion about how these programs actually affect folks on the ground with our farmers. So stay tuned for that. I'm really excited for that part of the conversation, but we want to level set all of these other pieces first. So Naya, can you tell us a little bit about the Farm Bill, kind of a little bit about how it's organized, not too much because we don't need to go into the wonky weeds of all of it. And then what are EDF's main priorities in this year's Farm Bill?
Yeah, thanks, Shoshana. So the Farm Bill is composed of 12 titles covering commodities, conservation, nutrition, credit, rural development, research, forestry, energy, horticulture, crop insurance, and miscellaneous, which is a bit of a catch-all. And without getting too deep into the weeds of the process, the House and Senate Agriculture Committees draft and vote on their own version of the bill. Each chamber then reviews, amends, and votes on their respective bills, and then committee leaders form a conference committee to combine the two bills and then vote on a final version. And then it's sent to the White House for the president's signature. And so in thinking of our priorities, EDF Action urges Congress to pass a farm bill that protects investments in GHG reduction made by last year's Inflation Reduction Act, also investing in new climate smart practices and bolstering food and agriculture research. The Farm Bill must also support beginning farmers and Black farmers and historically underserved communities who face structural barriers to accessing Farm Bill assistance. We must provide incentives for more farmers to lead in our climate mitigation efforts and allow them to benefit from their contributions. Reducing methane and nitrous oxide emissions are two particularly impactful climate opportunities for U.S. agriculture. And so this year's Farm Bill is an opportunity to invest in enteric methane innovation, improve manure collection, and optimize fertilizer use. In 2022, Congress took a significant step forward by passing the Inflation Reduction Act, which allocated nearly $20 billion in new funding to USDA conservation programs that have long been oversubscribed and underfunded. And Farm Bill conservation programs are available to all farmers, regardless of commodity or region, and farmers are excited about this new pot of funding. And so the Farm Bill should maintain and build on these investments to these critical programs. Investing in adaptation allows farmers and ranchers to continue to feed a growing population and support rural economies for generations to come. And so to build agriculture resilience to unavoidable climate impacts, the Farm Bill must enhance crop insurance to reward climate resilience and optimize land easement programs and improve financial literacy about conservation and risk. And lastly, food and agriculture research drives innovation and helps farmers adapt to the changing climate. It improves crop yields and enhances the nutritional value of our food. So continuing to fund research programs like FAR, the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, which is the primary entity establishing public-private partnerships for agriculture research, but also land-grant universities, especially 1890s and USDA climate hubs. These are all a few examples of how Congress can ensure that we have a resilient, productive, and sustainable food system that benefits everyone. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Naya. So over to you, Kristen. We've talked about a lot of things in big concepts. I'm wondering if you can localize this for us. Tell us about the conservation programs, how you look at them as a farmer, what you do on your own farm. And one more question to add to that is, what changes would allow for even more farmers to adopt to climate smart agriculture practices?
Great, thanks. Well, I think the other people on the call have really covered the entire Farm Bill, so you don't really need me. But let me just say that for us, we have engaged in a lot of climate smart practices here on our farm. And one of the things we really look forward to is in the Farm Bill, having more opportunity to look for partners, because if you want to try something, let's say you want to change up your tillage system, there's a couple things you need. Probably a partner that will help you with some of the cost share at times, but more importantly, good data. And part of the Farm Bill that we hope to look at is a better job of sharing data between missions at USDA in an aggregated and anomalized way so that we can look at practices and say, okay, this practice in this part of the country, which is similar to where I live, could really work and benefit me, whether it's about manure management, nitrogen management, fertilizer management, all of those things. The Farm Bill allows us to try some things that are new, but we would really like to see more sharing of data, because data is how we do things. Things that as we make decisions on how we're going to act on the land, we need science. We need to see what the productivity and profitability could be to us here. And then we're also looking for advice and partners. The research title sometimes of the Farm Bill is something that we forget about. The importance of research at the government level is really critical as we adapt and mitigate out here. For instance, here for us, we have introduced a third crop on our ground. We now put cereal rye in the fall. It germinates slightly in the fall, overwinters, and then is up again in the springtime. And it helps us with erosion control. It gives us a great seed bed to use. And that kind of thing, that kind of research happens at lots of different levels, but the research title at the Farm Bill looks at, okay, what other crops could we use out here that have an opportunity for profitability as well as for good soil health and water quality work. So it's really amazing how many things are in the Farm Bill and touch on the everyday lives of what we do out here. It also helps establish customers for us. So those price supports that Aaron talked about and looking at market development, also really an important piece. And as I talk with my peers around the country and we talk about mitigation process and adaptation, they really look towards that research and as well as partners and programs with the conservation title as critical for their planning and action on the ground.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. Really amazing to really learn about the entire ecosystem of the Farm Bill and how we need climate smart in all of those pieces. So thank you so much for that. And Aaron, last but not least, over to you for a question about the National Farmers Union. So you're working with farmers and ranchers regularly. What have you been hearing about how sustainability and conservation practices are benefiting farmers' work and lives? And then second question, how did the climate smart agricultural investments in the Inflation Reduction Act make a difference for farmers and their families?
Thanks for that, Shoshana. Well, first of all, as I think Senator Stabenow, Chairwoman Stabenow said, and others have mentioned here, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, it's a big deal. Truly a historic investment in addressing climate change here in the United States, just in general, but certainly historic investments for agriculture. And primarily through those USDA voluntary incentive-based Farm Bill conservation programs. Many farmers union members use those programs. So many farmers use them. As I think Naya mentioned, they've been historically oversubscribed, underfunded, just not enough resources. There's so much more farmers want to do and can do. And as Kristen mentioned, with the right data, with the right tools, with the right research, there are so many opportunities, but there are funding constraints, and the IRA created more breathing room there, greater opportunity. We shouldn't forget about the renewable energy side of the equation through the IRA too, and our members tell us about those. And I think Chairwoman Stabenow mentioned those. Our members support programs like REAP, the Rural Energy for America program, which helps farmers and rural small businesses for that matter do solar installations, put in wind turbines, do energy efficiency projects on their farms or with their businesses. And so that's a key aspect of addressing climate change in rural areas too, and helping folks create stronger businesses for the future. One other thing I might mention around all of this and that our members are excited about that I don't think has come up yet, is we're excited about how the current administration has gotten creative and listened to stakeholders about what they need. And one thing they did was create the Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities, this new initiative at USDA. And one thing I should say before I say a little bit more about what that is part of how it all came together actually was NFU and EDF and others for that matter working together. NFU and EDF co-chair the Food and Agriculture Climate Alliance along with two other farm organizations, and there's 24 steering committee members spanning farm, environmental, food spaces. And we worked together to propose to USDA to do something just like this. And they found the resources to set this up. And so Secretary Bill Sachs, USDA, created this more than $3 billion in additional investment to help various stakeholders from university and researcher community to farmers, to the environmental community to work together to do projects that create unique opportunities all across the country, all across geographies, different types of crops and livestock to address climate change and to get more conservation practices on the ground. For Farmers Union, we're organized into state divisions because we're a federated organization. We've got folks in Oklahoma, in North Dakota, and all the way to Hawaii who are involved in these projects. There is a Hawaii Farmers Union. And so we're really excited about those opportunities as well, and all of the investments that this administration has been putting into climate smart ag.
Great. Thank you so much, Aaron. And I really appreciate you at the end talking about how advocacy has played a role in all of the things that we've kind of created thus far and all of the wonderful programs that are happening. And so it's also inspirational, I think, to our audience that like advocacy works and like being vocal about this is really important. So thanks for highlighting that. So we're going to talk a little bit about Congress now, which is always a fun topic. So we know that Congress often has to undergo pretty complex practices to get a piece of legislation across, particularly in a divided government. And this is an important policy passage that only comes once every 5 years. And we also know that the Farm Bill actually expired on September 30th. So there's a lot going on here. What does the process look like for enacting the Farm Bill? Like what's ahead? I know Senator Stabenow alluded to an extension. And then what drives the sense of urgency behind passing the Farm Bill this year, which I know is also really important. So I'm going to open this up. I don't know, Aaron or Naya, if you want to speak to the government relations insider baseball piece, and then whoever else wants to chime in.
Aaron, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Well, I think that's absolutely right that extending the current Farm Bill is highly likely. Without getting too in the weeds, hopefully we've been hearing that government funding will run out again coming up here in just about 14, 15 days, November 17th. I might not have my numbers quite right. And there's been talk about hitching a Farm Bill extension to that so-called continuing resolution that would hopefully pass to keep the government open. And there, at the very least, is truly a need for an extension before the end of the calendar year because of some kind of wonky things in the Farm Bill that would basically revert to so-called permanent law that would create some real challenges, would revert us to really old 1930s and 40s style farm policy that wouldn't work very well in the modern era. So we will need an extension of the current law if we can't get a Farm Bill done on time, and the meaning before the end of this year. And those prospects are quite dim at this point. But I think to the point about urgency, and I'm sure others have thoughts on this, that is not at all, I think, what members of Congress don't look at that extension as kicking the can down the road, and we shouldn't either. There's more time needed to get one done, to resolve challenges around funding, some policy disagreements, and so on. But The extension does not mean we stop working, does not mean Congress stops working, and to get a good farm bill, we're all going to need to come together across different stakeholder groups to find that path forward. There have been protracted battles in Congress, notably around who the Speaker of the House would be. That's really taken a lot of the air out of the room, and also around funding the government and challenges with current slim majorities in the House especially. And some of those things have gotten in the way of an on-time farm bill. But I think that if we continue working together, we're going to get a good one done, and we're going to get one done hopefully before long. What other thoughts do folks have?
Yeah, definitely. Just to chime in, I think I completely agree with what Aaron said. The Farm Bill, it's a balancing act between economic and environmental and social factors, and the impact not only resonates across the food and agriculture community, but every human being in the United States. It's a very important piece of legislation, and there is a sense of urgency. We would like a farm bill that, prioritizes climate smart practices and protects the important investments made by the Inflation Reduction Act. And if it can't get done this year, then it is imperative to have an extension. And like Aaron said, we are definitely, the work doesn't stop there. We're going to continue the work. So.
Great, thank you. Kristen?
Yeah, just anecdotally, I've had the opportunity to work on farm bills since 1979. Yeah, I'm old. And I cannot tell you enough, this traditionally and historically has been an amazing nonpartisan bill. So, and advocacy plays such a huge part of moving this forward. That being said, like Aaron and Naya both pointed out, the work doesn't stop just because we're in this period of kind of holding. And we don't want to rush ahead to get a bad farm bill. We want an appropriate, workable farm bill that becomes the path for us to work for the next 5 years. So I can't begin to tell you how important it is to talk with the people who are working on it, whether it be the legislator from your area or any of the rest of us who have a stake in it, a role in it, and reminding us how many people really are watching and how important it is. Everything from, like we said, electrification to market prices to how we're going to plan for crop insurance, credit, everything gives us guidance within that bill. And so I just cannot begin to tell you how important appropriate advocacy is.
Well said, Kristen. And I think you maybe knew my next question, which was all about advocacy, but that was beautiful and really well said. So this ties into it. So we'll see who else has something to add as our last question today. With so many things up in the air, like you alluded to, like government funding, like a speaker that we don't really know exactly how they're going to act on this. And with a lot of people who don't understand all of the policy things that we touched on today, like myself, I definitely don't understand all of them. How can they advocate for a climate smart ag bill? What is important for them to raise? What is the role of the everyday person who really cares about climate, the EDF audience? What is their role in advocating for a climate smart ag bill?
I'll let the others start and I'll do cleanup.
I think, our constituents on the ground play a major role in advocating for the Farm Bill and climate smart agricultural practices. Congress, they want to hear from their constituents. Their voice is more powerful than even my voice and, in this role. And so I think that talking to your members of Congress and letting them know what you care about and telling them how it impacts you in your everyday life is one of the most strategic and powerful things that you can do.
Great, thanks, Naya.
Yes, I'll just chime in as a city girl. It's important for everybody, irrespective of where you live. Climate change, in terms of emissions, affects all of us everywhere around the world. And climate change impacts and the ability for farmers to produce food affects us, I'd say on average, at least 3 times a day. And for most of people like me who snack a lot, maybe 6, 7 times a day. You know, food is important, and how it's grown is super important. And retaining the fabric, social cohesion in rural communities is super important. So we all need to speak up. And you often hear rumors get started very quickly, like, oh, nobody in the ag space cares about climate, and therefore we will do X, Y, Z. So don't let people take the words out of your mouth. Be your own voice and chime in, is what I would say, wherever you live.
Yeah. I'll just put in my 2 cents. Climate, you know, around the coffee shops in the countryside of America, you're not going to walk in and find a lot of farmers talking specifically about climate smart practices, but they are talking about what's going to make me more resilient as a producer. How do I treat my soil? How do I manage manure? How do I engage in regenerative agriculture and renewable energy? And farmers do care. They notice that things are changing, but you may not hear the term climate smart in the coffee shop. So keep that in mind, but know that they want to engage and are eager to do so with the right guidance, science, data, and partners.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Aaron, did you want to get a last sentence in, or?
Sure, why not? I mean, advocacy is so important, and a huge reason of why farmers union members are farmers union members is because they want their voices to be heard, and is to help make that happen. Everyone should around the Farm Bill. I completely agree. Everyone eats. Everyone is impacted by the Farm Bill, and sometimes in ways you may not even imagine. It's a really big piece of legislation. So I think it is so essential.
Oh, no tech problems until this moment.
Oh, sorry, I had my computer, I think, freaked out. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I'm not quite sure where I was, but I'll stick with everyone eats. Make sure you have your voice heard. And yes, the other thing I was going to say, and this is jumping off something Kristen said, you know, we get a good farm bill when we find a bipartisan path forward, when we find a farm bill that goes across the things all different stakeholders need. So farm bills really are about coming together and finding a path. And so an important part of the way you could make your voice heard is reminding Congress that that's the kind of farm bill you want to get done. That's how you can get a good climate smart outcome in a farm bill, and you know, while balancing those needs with so many others that folks have and need in the farm bill.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for this robust discussion. Really wonderful. We went really deep on a couple things and came back to a broad ask that we can all agree on. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and teaching our network about all of the wonderful things that you make your everyday lives. Thank you for your leadership and guidance here. And yeah, we'll move on to the next part of our program. Thank you, speakers. All right, well, the next part of our program is to take all that you learned today and put it into action. As we learned today, the Farm Bill is a critical piece of legislation for advancing climate priorities. So we're going to go ahead and have you take action today. As Congress moves to consider this, we need your help to ensure climate and conservation are priorities in this year's Farm Bill. So on the screen and in the comments, you'll find a link to take action now. We have an online tool that makes it quick and easy for you to take action. You'll contact your members of Congress and tell them what you support. It even has text already set up for you. And this is a critical opportunity to take action. The Farm Bill is only reevaluated once every 5 years, and right now is actually a really critical moment to weigh in, as you heard. So please use the link on screen or in the comments, and it's at edfaction.org/climate-smart-farm-bill. We're going to take a moment to pause to let you actually take that action. Remember that it's your member of Congress's job to respond to the needs and values of their constituents. So your message can really make a difference. And also, if you want to do something extra, if you customize any bit of that language, it does make a difference. So if you have a story connected to the Farm Bill or to farmers, if your life or life story connects to the farmers, go ahead and add that to the text that we've suggested. I'm going to give you a moment to take action now, and we'll be back soon to wrap up. All right, well, hopefully you saw how quick and easy it is to contact your members of Congress. I hope you feel inspired today. I learned a lot. I feel ready to take action, and I hope you do too. Thank you all so much for spending this hour with us. Thank you for joining us. Thanks again to our wonderful speakers. We're grateful to be in this work with all of you. Take care. Happy Friday.